History of the Spoon. Part 1. Introduction and Ancient Origins. The spoon is a simple object. It does not shine like a sword. It does not roar like a lion. It does not fly like a bird. But it has stayed with us for thousands of years. It does not argue. It does not break easily. It does not complain. It simply carries food, quietly, calmly, gently. We use it almost every day. We rarely think about it. But tonight we will. Tonight, we will think slowly about the spoon. Long, long ago, before phones, before cars, before paper, there were spoons. The very first spoons were not made in factories. They were not sold in shops. They were found in nature. A shell, a curved piece of wood, a flat stone. These were the earliest spoons. They were not beautiful, but they worked, and that was enough. In ancient Egypt, people used spoons made of wood, ivory, or stone. Some spoons were decorated with animals or gods. Others were simple and plain. They used them for eating, for cooking, and even for religious ceremonies. In fact, the spoon had meaning. It was not just a tool. It was a part of daily life and sacred life. In ancient China, spoons were also important. Made of bone, bronze, or pottery. They were short, with round bowls. They were used for soup, rice, and tea. A spoon was not just for eating. It was part of the table, part of family, part of culture. Centuries passed, and still, the spoon remained. People made them from metal, from silver, from gold, from tin. Some spoons were big, some were small, some were just for babies. No matter the time, no matter the place, there was always a spoon. Part 2. The Middle Ages and the Rich. The Middle Ages were not very clean, but even then, people used spoons. At first, only the rich had spoons. Their spoons were made of silver. They were shiny and heavy, sometimes too heavy. They used spoons at banquets, with roasted meat, and thick soup, very thick soup. The poor, however, used wooden spoons. They were simple, plain, sometimes carved at home. The wood would wear down over time, but they still worked. As long as the bowl was curved, food could be lifted, and that was enough. In castles, nobles had personal spoons. No one else could touch them. They were guarded, like treasure. A spoon might be passed down from parent to child. It was not just a spoon. It was a family item. Some spoons had jewels. Some had initials. Some had pictures of animals. One had a goose. Another had a bear. But most of all, they had pride. There were spoons for different things. A spoon for soup. A spoon for jam. A spoon for medicine. Even a spoon just for eggs. And yes, someone had to clean them. Usually, a servant. Usually, someone tired. The church also used spoons, holy spoons, for ceremonies, for wine, for water, for sacred oils. They were not just jewels, they were symbols. In England, there were coronation spoons, used when a new king or queen was crowned. Made of gold, used to pour oil, sacred oil. That spoon still exists today. It is very old, very shiny, very royal. By the late Middle Ages, spoons became more common. Not just for the rich, not just for priests. Ordinary people had them too. Still, spoons were special. They were often given as gifts. A silver spoon was a gift for a new baby. That is where the saying comes from. Born with a silver spoon in your mouth. It meant you were lucky, you were rich, you were born into a family with spoons. But spoons were more than wealth. They were comfort, they were tradition, and they were always nearby. Even during war, people carried spoons. Soldiers, sailors, travelers, they might forget a blanket, but not a spoon, because a spoon meant food, and food meant strength, and strength was survival. Part 3. Spoons in modern times and around the world. The modern spoon is everywhere. In homes, in offices, in airplanes, in schools. Where there are people, there are spoons. In the 1700s and 1800s, factories changed everything. Spoons were now made in large numbers. Steel, aluminum, cheap metal. They were not handmade anymore. They were stamped, molded, mass-produced, fast, simple, identical. In America, spoons became common in every home. People no longer had one special spoon. Now they had sets, a spoon for every guest, a spoon for every dish. Big spoons, small spoons, teaspoons, tablespoons, and yes, measuring spoons too. Spoons became part of recipes. Add 1 teaspoon of sugar. Stir for 2 minutes. Use a large spoon. Without spoons, cooking became confusing. With spoons, cooking made sense. In restaurants, spoons are polished, placed perfectly beside the fork and knife, sometimes on a napkin, sometimes in a glass. They are ready ... silent ... waiting. There are different spoons for different foods. Soup spoons, dessert spoons, ice cream spoons, coffee spoons. Each spoon has a purpose. Each spoon has a size. In Japan, soup spoons are deep and curved, made of ceramic, used for ramen and miso soup. In India, spoons are small, used with rice, lentils, and curry. In France, spoons are elegant. In China, they are wide and short. In Thailand, spoons are paired with forks, no knives. Around the world, the spoon adapts. It changes shape, it changes size, but the purpose stays the same. To carry food, to help eat, to stay useful. In the 20th century, plastic spoons arrived. Disposable, cheap, colorful, they were everywhere. Picnics, parties, hospitals, easy to use, easy to throw away, but not easy for the earth. Today, more people are returning to metal spoons. Reusable, durable, friendly to nature. Some are wooden, some are bamboo, some are made from corn. Spoons that break down, spoons that vanish, spoons that help the planet. There are spoon collectors, people who collect spoons from every city they visit. Souvenir spoons, tiny, shiny, with pictures, statues, flags, famous places. One spoon says Paris, another says Rome, another says Tokyo, each one a memory. There are also spoon artists, people who bend spoons, thin spoons, carve spoons. One person made a spoon into a butterfly, another made a spoon into a ring. Because spoons can be more than tools, they can be art. Spoons are even in music. Yes, music. Some people clap to spoons together. Tuk tuk tuk. It makes rhythm. It makes sound. In folk music, in dances, in fun, and spoons are in space. Astronauts use special spoons, made for zero gravity. Spoons that do not spill. Spoons that stay in place. Even in space, humans bring spoons, because no matter where we go, or how far we travel, we still need to eat, and we still need a spoon. The end. The Kingdom of the Lost Seasons. Once upon a time, in a land beyond the reach of maps and beyond the memory of most men, there was a kingdom that had forgotten the seasons. It was not always so, for the kingdom had once known spring and summer, autumn and winter. But over time, the seasons had vanished, one by one, like fading stars in the morning sky. The sky above the kingdom was always grey, a pale canvas brushed with endless stillness. The trees did not grow leaves, nor did they shed them. The flowers did not bloom, and the snow did not fall. The sun was a pale disk that gave little warmth, and the wind was neither cold nor warm. People had forgotten the smell of spring rain and the sound of summer thunder. Children grew up without knowing the crunch of autumn leaves or the hush of snowfall. In the heart of this strange and quiet land stood the castle of the Silent King. He was old, older than any man alive, and he had not spoken in 100 years. It was said that he had locked his voice in a silver box and thrown the key into the deepest part of the sea. His beard had turned to mist, and his eyes were pools of silent memory. He walked the halls of his castle like a shadow, leaving no sound, only the echo of a man who once sang to the sky. His daughter, Princess Alira, lived in the highest tower. She was kind and gentle, with hair the color of the first light of dawn. though she had never seen the seasons herself. She had read of them in old books, and her dreams were filled with green meadows, falling leaves, and snowflakes dancing in the air. Her chamber was filled with drawings she had made from imagination, leaves of every shape and color, suns with smiling faces, and trees that glowed under blankets of snow. One day, a boy named Corin arrived at the castle gates. He had walked for days from the edge of the world, guided only by a dream. He wore a scarf made of blue fire and boots made from river stones. His eyes were the color of the sky just before a storm, and he spoke with the calm of distant hills. Corin asked to speak with the silent king. The guards laughed, for no one spoke to the king. But Alira heard of the boy and invited him to her tower. There, they talked of dreams and stories, of forgotten songs and hidden magic. Corin told her he had seen a tree with golden leaves that whispered when the wind blew. He said it grew at the edge of the last true forest, far beyond the sleeping mountains. He told her of animals that glowed like fireflies and of lakes that held the reflection of the past. Alira believed him. She had always believed in things others called impossible. She told him of her father's silence and the missing seasons. Corin took her hand and promised to help her find them. He said he had seen the path in his dreams, and if they followed it, they might find the garden where the seasons slept. They left the castle that night. The wind carried their names like a lullaby. They passed through the hollow fields, where no birds sang, and the grass was as sharp as knives. They crossed the mirror lake, which showed not their reflections, but the faces of people long gone. The lake whispered to them, telling them the stories of those who had forgotten their purpose. They climbed the sleeping mountains, where the snow never melted and the stars seemed close enough to touch. In the caves of those mountains, they met an old woman made of stone. She gave them a lantern that never went out, lit with the memory of the sun. She warned them that time moved strangely ahead, that they might find themselves in the past or the future before reaching their destination. At last, they reached the edge of the last true forest. It was alive with colors Alira had never seen. Leaves rustled with forgotten laughter. Flowers opened to the sound of ancient lullabies. The trees bent slightly in greeting. In the center stood the golden tree, taller than the clouds. Its roots hummed like deep music, and its branches held bells that rang when no wind touched them. The tree spoke to them, not with words, but with memories. It showed Alira a time when the seasons danced through the land, when people sang to the rain and laughed in the sun. It showed her the day the king had lost his voice, trading it for a promise to protect the land from sorrow. The king had loved the queen, Alira's mother, more than life itself. When she died, the kingdom began to lose its color, and the seasons faded with his voice. The seasons had been hidden away, sealed in a secret garden that could only be found by one who remembered all four. Alira wept, for she had never known them. But Corin had. He had grown up at the edge of the world, where the seasons still lingered in forgotten corners. He took her hand, and together they walked through a door that appeared between sighing trees. Inside was the garden. Spring hummed with bees and blooming cherry trees. Summer lay in warm grass and golden sunlight. Autumn drifted through the trees in waves of orange and red. Winter rested in stillness, in soft snow and silver silence. Alira stepped forward. She touched the rain. She caught a snowflake. She tasted the wine and laughed. Corin guided her through each part of the garden. They danced beneath blossoms, chased falling leaves, and built towers of snow. Time held its breath as they moved from season to season, gathering threads of memory and light. In the center of the garden was a crystal fountain, silent and dry. Alira knelt and placed her hand on its edge. The water began to rise, glowing with the colors of every season. The fountain sang a song without words, and Alira understood it. The seasons were ready to return, but only if the kingdom remembered joy. They returned to the castle, and everything had changed. The sun was golden. The air smelled of pine and honey. Birds sang, flowers grew, the people wept and danced, the streets filled with music. Children laughed for the first time in years. Trees bent in the wind, their leaves whispering stories. The silent king stepped from his throne. He opened his mouth and sang a single note. The note became a breeze, then a storm, then a song that filled the kingdom. The voice he had given up returned, carried by his daughter's laughter and the courage of a boy from the edge of the world. The seasons had returned. The castle bloomed with ivy and roses. Snowflakes kissed the windows in winter, and bees floated through open halls in summer. Every year, the people gathered to celebrate the day of the lost season's return. When the kingdom remembered itself, Coran vanished with the dawn. Some say he became the wind. Others say he returned to the stars. Alea ruled the kingdom, a heart forever full of spring and summer, autumn and winter, and the land never forgot the seasons again. The girl who gathered time. In a village where the sun always rose at the same hour and set with perfect rhythm, there lived a girl named Anel. She was not like the other children, who ran and laughed and chased shadows across fields. Anel walked slowly. She listened to the wind. She watched how the clouds moved. She counted the seconds between raindrops. People in the village said she was strange. They called her the clock girl, but Anel did not mind. She smiled when she heard the bells in the distance. She smiled when an old man blinked twice before speaking. She watched everything. Not because she was curious, but because she felt time move through things. Her mother was a weaver, her father a shoemaker. They loved Anel, but they did not understand her. Sometimes they asked why she sat outside for hours, staring at the moon. Anel said, because the moon never rushed, it never forgot, and it never lied. One day, while walking in the hills behind the village, Anel found a stone with a crack shaped like a spiral. She touched it, and the air around her stopped. The leaves paused in mid-fall. The birds hung in the sky without moving. Even her breath stayed still. She blinked. The world blinked back. Then, time started again, slow and quiet. Anel picked up the stone and held it to her chest. She did not know what it was, but she felt the weight of centuries in her hands. She whispered, softly, so no one else could hear, I hear you. From that day, Anel changed. She woke before the sun. She walked through the village while everyone slept. She watched dew form on the petals. She listened to the soft creaks of wood stretching in the cold. She began to gather time. It started with little things. The breath of a sleeping dog. The pause between one heartbeat and the next. A drop of ink falling into a well. She would close her eyes and tuck these moments into a jar made of silence. Then she gathered more. She found a place in the forest where the trees whispered in circles. There she heard the footsteps of years. She saw the ghost of a young deer walking beside its old self. She sat on a rock and watched a flower bloom backward. Every time she left, she brought time with her, in her pockets, in her sleeves, behind her ears. No one noticed, but they began to feel it. The baker said his bread stayed warm longer. The children said their naps felt deeper. The old women said their memories were clearer. Time became gentle in the village. It no longer rushed. It rested. One evening, a stranger came. He wore a coat that shimmered like melted shadows. His eyes were grey like distant thunder. He spoke in a voice that ticked. I have come for what you carry, he said. Anel looked up. She held nothing in her hands, but she knew. I do not carry it, she said. I tend it. The man frowned. Time is not meant to be held. It is meant to pass. Anel nodded, but it also needs to be seen. The man stepped closer. You are not old enough to understand its weight. She placed the spiral stone on the table between them. And you are too old to remember its light. They sat in silence. Outside, the wind changed direction. The moon turned slightly in the sky. A leaf fell up. I will return, the man said. Anel smiled. I will still be here. The stranger left. Years passed, though no one counted them. Annelle grew taller, her voice grew softer, her eyes held the colors of sunrise. She built a small room in the forest, with a door that only opened when the trees allowed it. Inside, she placed jars of moments, a child's first laugh, a grandmother's last breath, the second when someone forgives. She wove these into tapestries, not of thread, but of time. When someone visited and sat long enough, they would feel memories not their own. A field in summer, a fire in winter, the hand of someone long gone. The villagers no longer called her strange. They called her the timekeeper. When she walked through the village, clocks would pause for a second. Not stop, just bow. She never married, never left. She grew older, but slowly, like a hill changing shape beneath moss. And one day, she vanished. They searched the village, the hills, the forest. They found only a stone, smooth and warm, pulsing softly with a rhythm older than the stars. They say she became part of time, not trapped in it, but holding it steady. Now, in that village, time moves kindly. Children sleep well, dreams come gently, and if you walk quietly through the forest, you might find a room that was not there before. If you enter, sit still, breathe slowly, and listen. The moments will speak. The end. The Lantern Path, a bedtime story series in 5 episodes. Episode 1. The Village Without Sunlight. There was once a village where the sun no longer rose. The sky was always a deep, pale gray. Lanterns hung from every tree, window, and road. They were the only light left in the world. In this village lived a quiet girl named Leora. She was gentle and curious. She carried a small lantern one passed down from her grandmother. Its flame never went out, not in the wind, not in the rain, not in sadness. One day, Leora noticed the great lantern at the village tower dimming. It had always burned bright, but now it seemed tired, like it was forgetting how to shine. So she packed a bag and she left the village, following only the soft glow of her grandmother's lantern, hoping to find the source of light and bring the warmth of the sun back. Episode 2. The Forest of Gentle Whispers. Beyond the village was a forest, not dark, not frightening, just quiet. The trees stood still, their leaves barely moving. Everything whispered. Leora walked slowly between the trees. Her lantern lit the mossy path, and the forest listened. She met a fox made of silver fog. It did not speak, but it walked beside her. When she stopped, it stopped. When she sat, it curled up near her feet. They found a pool of still water. It reflected not the sky, but a memory of the sun rising once. The fox dipped its paw into the water. Ripples spread like golden rings, and for a moment, the leaves turned gold. The forest remembered the sun, but only just. Leora whispered, "I'm looking for the place where the light was born." The fox blinked, then began to walk toward the east. Episode 3. The Hill of Forgotten Bells. They climbed a quiet hill, where wind chimes hung from trees. Silent and rusted, no bells had rung in many years. At the top of the hill was an old man. He wore robes that shimmered like faded sunlight. He sat beneath a broken bell, his eyes closed. Leora asked, "Do you know where the light has gone?" He opened one eye. "The light hides where it is loved," he said, "and flees from where it is forgotten." She showed him her lantern. The flame danced softly. The man smiled. He gave her a small bell, tied to a red ribbon. "Ring it when you are ready," he said, "but not before." She bowed. She did not yet understand the bell's purpose, but she carried it carefully. The fox waited at the edge of the hill, and together they walked on. Episode 4. The lake that held the sky. They came to a lake that stretched beyond sight. It was smooth as glass. It reflected the stars, even though no stars had been seen for years. On the shore stood a woman with silver hair. She held a bowl of water that shimmered with color. "I collect the moments when light touches the world," she said. She poured the bowl into the lake. The water glowed faintly. A golden thread spread across the surface. She turned to Leora. "Your lantern holds not fire but memory. The memory of warmth, of hope, of light. Where do I go next? Leora asked. The woman touched her heart. When the bell rings, follow its sound. So Leora took the ribboned bell and tied it to her lantern. She and the fox stood silently at the lake's edge, and a soft chime rang out. Once, twice, the lake whispered, "Go north." Episode 5. The place where light was born. The sky above grew lighter as they traveled. Not bright, not blue, but no longer grey. They climbed a final hill. At the top was a circle of stones, and in the center, a tree of crystal and gold. It was the tree of first light. No leaves, no flowers, only branches that glowed from within. Leora stepped closer. Her lantern flickered wildly. She placed it at the tree's base. The flame rose. It stretched and wrapped around the tree, like a hug, and the tree responded. It pulsed once, and light spilled from its branches. Soft as a breath, warm as a memory, the fox vanished into mist. The hill brightened. The sky softened, and far away, in the village, the first flame burned bright again. Leora closed her eyes. She had not brought the sun back, but she had reminded the world that light still lived, in quiet hearts, and steady hands, and small lanterns carried with love. They found a pool of still water. It reflected not the sky, but a memory of the sun rising once. The fox dipped its paw into the water. Ripples spread like golden rings, and for a moment, the leaves turned gold. The forest remembered the sun, but only just. Leora whispered, "I'm looking for the place where the light was born." The fox blinked, then began to walk toward the east. Episode 3. The Hill of Forgotten Bells. They climbed a quiet hill, where wind chimes hung from trees. Silent and rusted, no bells had rung in many years. At the top of the hill was an old man. He wore robes that shimmered like faded sunlight. He sat beneath a broken bell, his eyes closed. Leora asked, "Do you know where the light has gone?" He opened one eye. "The light hides where it is loved," he said, "and flees from where it is forgotten." She showed him her lantern. The flame danced softly. The man smiled. He gave her a small bell, tied to a red ribbon. "Ring it when you are ready," he said, "but not before." She vowed. She did not yet understand the bell's purpose, but she carried it carefully. The fox waited at the edge of the hill, and together they walked on. Episode 4. The lake that held the sky. They came to a lake that stretched beyond sight. It was smooth as glass. It reflected the stars, even though no stars had been seen for years. On the shore stood a woman with silver hair. She held a bowl of water that shimmered with color. "I collect the moments when light touches the world," she said. She poured the bowl into the lake. The water glowed faintly. A golden thread spread across the surface. She turned to Leora. "Your lantern holds not fire but memory. The memory of warmth, of hope, of light. Where do I go next?" Leora asked. The woman touched her heart. When the bell rings, follow its sound. So Leora took the ribboned bell and tied it to her lantern. She and the fox stood silently at the lake's edge, and a soft chime rang out. Once, twice, the lake whispered, "Go north." Episode 5. The place where light was born. The sky above grew lighter as they traveled. Not bright, not blue, but no longer grey. They climbed a final hill. At the top was a circle of stones, and in the center, a tree of crystal and gold. It was the tree of first light. No leaves, no flowers, only branches that glowed from within. Leora stepped closer. Her lantern flickered wildly. She placed it at the tree's base. The flame rose. It stretched and wrapped around the tree, like a hug, and the tree responded. It pulsed once, and light spilled from its branches. Soft as a breath, warm as a memory, the fox vanished into mist. The hill brightened. The sky softened, and far away, in the village, the first flame burned bright again. Leora closed her eyes. She had not brought the sun back, but she had reminded the world that light still lived, in quiet hearts, and steady hands, and small lanterns carried with love. The Cloudmaker's Apprentice, in a quiet valley wrapped between gentle hills, where rivers whispered secrets to the stones and the grass, swayed like lullabies in the wind, there lived a girl named Alyra. She was not loud or fast or wild like others her age. Instead, she was still, quiet, always watching. Alir lived with her grandmother in a house made of stone and straw, where the windows faced the sky and the roof grew moss that bloomed in spring. Her grandmother was a cloudmaker. She did not make clouds from machines or magic. She made them from memory. Each morning, she would sit on the back porch with a long wooden staff and hum songs so old that even the trees leaned in to listen. The air around her would shimmer, and slowly, thin wisps would rise from the ground like morning mist. These wisps would twist and curl and float upward, becoming clouds, sometimes big and fluffy, sometimes thin and streaked like brushstrokes. Each one held a story. Alir loved watching the clouds form. She would lie in the tall grass with her eyes wide open, tracing the shapes above. A bear chasing butterflies, a ship sailing a silent sea, a girl walking alone through a forest. One day, her grandmother turned to her and said, "It is time you learn. The sky needs new stories." Alir blinked, nay. Her grandmother smiled, soft and slow. "Yes, but first, you must find your own sky." And so began Alir's journey. She packed a satchel with bread, a flask of berry water, and a small notebook tied with string. Her grandmother gave her the cloudmaker's staff, which was taller than she was and smelled like pine after rain. Alir walked away from the house that morning as the sun rose like a soft promise. She did not know where she was going, only that the sky would show her. The path through the valley was lined with daisies and forget-me-nots. Birds flew low, dipping their wings toward her like greetings. The wind carried her grandmother's last song, humming it through the leaves. By noon, Alir reached the river bend where dragonflies danced above the water. She dipped her feet in the cool stream and let her thoughts drift. She saw a cloud shaped like a book and another like a feather. She sketched them in her notebook, each with a short sentence beneath. Cloud of memories, feather of whispers. A figure appeared across the river, an old man in a blue coat with silver buttons. He was fishing without bait, humming a tune without words. He looked at Alir and smiled. "You're the cloudmaker's girl." "Yes," she said. "I'm looking for my sky." The man pointed to the hills. "Beyond those hills is the town of Bellsleep. They say clouds are born in dreams there. Maybe yours are waiting." Alir thanked him and walked on. The hills were steep but kind. The earth smelled of thyme and soft soil. At the top, she saw bells sleep cold between forests like a cat in a basket. Bells chimed in the wind, though no one was ringing them. Alir entered the town at dusk. People moved slowly. They spoke in whispers and wore soft shoes that made no sound. Lamps glowed like fireflies along cobblestone streets. She stayed at a small inn where the pillows were stuffed with feathers from birds that never flew. That night, she dreamed of a cloud shaped like a staircase. It led upward into a sky that was not blue, but silver. When she awoke, her notebook was open. A new drawing appeared. She had drawn it in her sleep. The staircase cloud. The innkeeper saw her drawing and nodded. The path of echoes. Few see it in dreams. You must follow. Where does it go? Alir asked. To the place where sky and story meet. Alir followed the morning breeze, past the edge of town. The staircase from her dream appeared in the sky, faint but visible. With her staff in hand, she climbed, not with feet, but with belief. Each step brought a memory to life, a childhood laughter, a forgotten lullaby, a farewell not spoken aloud. At the top was a plain of soft cloud. In the center, a tree stood. Its bark shimmered with color. Its leaves hummed. A voice echoed, "This is the memory tree. It holds all skies. It sees all dreamers." Alir touched the tree. It showed her skies she had never seen. A red sky over dunes, a green sky above crystal rivers, a black sky lit by golden stars. The tree asked, "What story will you give us?" Alir closed her eyes. She whispered a story about a girl who walked the wind to find her place, about a grandmother who made clouds with memories, about a world that needed stillness. The tree accepted. A new branch grew. A new cloud was born. Alir returned to her valley. She was not the same. She was quiet still, but full. Now, each morning, she sits with her staff. She hums a new song. The clouds that rise carry dreams, memories, and stories yet to be told. And the sky, once plain, now changes shape. Because Alira, the cloud-maker's apprentice, had become a maker of skies. The end. The Forest That Forgot Time, Part 1. The quiet beginning. In a place far beyond the hills, beyond even the farthest rivers, there was a forest that no one remembered. It had no name, no signs, and no paths. Trees stood tall and silent, covered in soft moss, their roots buried deep in ancient earth. The wind moved gently through the leaves, but never too fast, and the sun shone softly, never too bright. No animals ran, no birds sang, but it was not sad. It was peaceful, as if the forest was resting after a very long day that had lasted for 1,000 years. In the middle of this forest stood a small wooden cabin, built long ago, but still strong and dry. It had one window, one door, and a chimney that no longer smoked. The roof was made of old grey wood, and ivy climbed up the sides like lazy green ribbons. Inside the cabin, everything was still. A table, a chair, a small bed with a folded blanket. But no one lived there, or so it seemed. One evening, as the sky turned a soft shade of violet, a small light appeared. It blinked once, then again. Slowly, a figure stepped out from behind a tree. It was not quite a person and not quite a shadow. It moved like fog. It breathed like wind. This was the keeper of the forest. The keeper did not speak, nor did they need to. Their presence was enough. Wherever they walked, the moss grew thicker, the air felt calmer, and the trees seemed to sigh with comfort. The keeper entered the cabin and sat in the chair. They placed a wooden bowl on the table and waited. They were waiting for a visitor. No one knew who the visitor would be, or when they would arrive, but the keeper knew they would come. One day, someday, maybe tonight. Part 2. The Arrival. Far away, in a town where the clocks always ran fast and the streets never slept, a boy named Milo closed his eyes. He had not slept well in weeks. The noise of the world buzzed in his ears, even at night. Cars, voices, screens, lights, everything was too loud, too fast. But that night, as he pulled his blanket up to his chin, he whispered to himself, "I wish I could find a place where time is quiet." He did not know why he said it. He did not expect anything to happen. But when he opened his eyes, he was standing in a forest. He wore the same clothes. He held nothing in his hands. But the air was different, softer. The sky was full of gentle stars. The ground felt warm, even though the night was cool. And the trees looked as though they were listening. Milo walked. He did not know where he was going, but his feet knew, step by step, through leaves and over roots. He moved as if the forest was guiding him. A soft light flickered in the distance. A small cabin, waiting. Inside, the keeper sat with the wooden bowl. They looked at Milo and nodded once. "Am I dreaming?" Milo asked. The keeper did not answer. Instead, they pushed the bowl toward him. It was full of water, clear, still, and deep. Milo looked in, and the story began. Part 3, The Water of Memory. As Milo stared into the water, images began to appear. A child chasing fireflies, a tree losing its leaves in a golden wind, a quiet snowfall landing on a sleeping village. The water showed seasons, moments, and memories he had never lived, but somehow knew. He felt warmth in his chest, a sense of calm he had not felt in years. He looked up, and the keeper was gone. But the cabin door opened by itself. Milo stepped out. The forest was no longer still. The trees moved, not with wind, but with intention. Flowers opened as he passed. Stones glowed faintly underfoot. The forest had accepted him. A path of soft light stretched ahead, and Milo followed it. He passed through a grove of singing trees, their branches humming gentle tunes. He crossed a brook that whispered old names. He climbed a hill where the stars touched the ground. At the top of the hill was a circle of stones, smooth and warm. In the center stood a sundial that cast no shadow. A voice, soft and patient, spoke. "You carried time without knowing. Would you like to understand it?" Milo nodded, and the sundial began to turn. New story. The Village Without Doors. Part 1. A Place of Always. In the heart of a wide green valley, surrounded by mountains shaped like sleeping animals, there was a village where no house had a door. The windows had curtains, and the roofs had tiles, but the doorways were always open. Rain came in, wind wandered through, but the people did not mind. They believed that nothing should be kept out, and nothing should be locked in. They believed that kindness was strongest when it flowed like a breeze, not when it hid behind a wall. Children in this village ran from home to home without knocking. They carried bread from ovens, messages from mothers, songs from one porch to the next. Strangers were rare, but never feared. Each visitor was greeted with tea and a place to sit. There was a girl named Nella who lived in a blue house by the river. She liked quiet mornings, warm milk, and books filled with drawings. She had a notebook where she wrote the things she noticed. One page said, "Birds do not wait." One cloudy morning, Nella found a stone on her windowsill. It was round and smooth, and it hummed faintly when she touched it. She placed it in her pocket and forgot about it until that night. When the moonlight made it glow, she dreamed of a city with too many doors, or locked. The people inside whispered, but never spoke aloud. She woke with a heavy feeling in her chest, like she had forgotten something important. The next day, she walked to the elder's house, where ivy grew in tangled waves. The elder, a woman with hair like soft wool, listened as Nella told her dream. The elder nodded. "That stone," she said, "comes from the edge." The edge of what? No one remembers. But when it glows, a journey is near. The story of the fairy and the golden bridge. Once upon a time, in a small village by the sparkling blue sea, there lived a girl named Lily. She was the only daughter of a poor family. Despite their hardships, Lily was well known throughout the village for her kind heart and pure beauty. She often helped the poor, took care of the sick, and brought food to families in need. People loved her because she never complained about her own fate, but always found ways to share with others. One day, while Lily was strolling through a forest near the village, she unexpectedly encountered an old woman sitting on a large stone. The old woman had silver hair and a wrinkled face, but her eyes were full of warmth and kindness. Lily approached her and respectfully greeted. "Hello, grandmother. Do you need any help?" The old woman looked at Lily and smiled. "My dear child, I see that your heart is full of kindness and goodness. I want to give you a gift, a miracle that only someone like you can receive." Lily was surprised, but also felt a strange warmth emanating from the old woman. She asked, "What gift, grandmother? How can I help you?" The old woman didn't answer directly but waved her hand gently. Immediately, a large golden bridge began to grow from the ground. The bridge shimmered like the stars in the night sky, stretching infinitely into the distance. "This is the Golden Bridge," the old woman said in a deep, calm voice. "This bridge will lead you to a place full of dreams and miracles. But remember, this bridge opens only for those with a pure heart and the courage to walk across it. Would you like to try?" Lily gazed at the radiant golden bridge before her. Though she didn't know what awaited her at the end, she felt a sense of curiosity and a desire to explore. She nodded and decided to embark on this journey. The bridge carried Lily through dense, ancient forests, clear rivers winding over smooth stones and towering mountains. Along the bridge, she encountered strange creatures, vibrant flowers with unknown names, and faint lights radiating from the stars above. It felt as though she was crossing into another world, a place where there was no darkness, no worries. After a long and challenging journey, Lily finally arrived at a marvelous kingdom. Here, there was no hustle and bustle of life, no concerns about food and money. Everyone in the kingdom lived in peace, and joy filled the air. People were always smiling, and everything around her seemed perfect. The fields were green, the houses charming, and the air fresh. Lily felt as if she had found a paradise. She was welcomed warmly and lived in a magnificent palace, where all her desires were granted. However, as time passed, Lily began to realize something. Though everything here was wonderful, she still felt that something was missing. Every morning, when she woke up in the grand palace, she remembered the simple mornings in her old village, where people were close to one another and showed love. Though life here was abundant, she felt a loneliness, an absence of connection. One day, while walking around the palace grounds, Lily unexpectedly met the old woman again. The woman looked into her eyes, her gaze full of understanding and tenderness, and asked, "My dear, do you feel happy?" Lily paused for a moment and then answered, "I feel that life here is wonderful, grandmother, but I can't forget the village I grew up in. There, even though life was poor, everyone loved one another and cared for each other. Here, I have everything, but I still feel that something important is missing." The old woman smiled, and the light from the golden bridge grew even warmer. She said, "You have realized something that many people cannot understand. Happiness is not about having everything you want. It is about cherishing what you already have and sharing it with others. You don't need to search far and wide for happiness. It will always be with you if you know how to spread love." Lily listened to her words and decided to return. She no longer needed the golden bridge, for she had learned that happiness was not a distant place, but something within her heart. She thanked the old woman and turned back to the golden bridge. With a light heart and a strong sense of determination, the bridge led her back to her old village, where every person shared warmth and love. When Lily returned, she continued to do the same work she had done before, helping the poor, caring for the sick, and sharing happiness with others. Although the village had no material wealth, it began to thrive, not because of riches, but because of love and sharing. People lived in peace, always grateful and caring for one another. Lily became a woman who was respected and loved by all. Her life was full of contentment and happiness because she had found the most valuable thing in life, peace, within her heart. From then on, the golden bridge was no longer a magical structure from the outside. It was the kindness and love Lily shared with everyone. Greek fairy tale series, The City Beneath the Wings of Pegasus. Part 1, The Girl and the Call from the Sky. Long ago in ancient Greece there was a village named the Lassa, lying beside the sea surrounded by green hills. The village was so peaceful that birds nested on rooftops, and the sea sang each night as the moon rose. In that village lived a girl named Elenia. She lived with her aging father blacksmith. Her mother had passed when Elenia was still young. Elenia was unlike other girls. She did not enjoy weaving or singing. She dreamed of wonders in the sky, of mythical creatures and ancient secrets that most people believed were only stories. Every night she climbed to the roof, sat in silence, and watched the stars. She wished to fly above the world to where the gods watched, from high to where giant wings stirred the clouds. One morning, while fetching water from the stream, Elenia heard a strange wind. It did not sound like wind through trees. It was more like a distant song coming from the sky. She looked up and saw a white figure soaring above the mountains. Pegasus, the winged horse, appeared for a moment, then vanished into the clouds. No one in the village believed her. They said it was sunlight playing tricks. But Elenia knew what she saw. Her dream had begun. Part 2. The climb to Olympus. Elenia could not forget the shape of Pegasus. Each day she climbed higher into the hills, believing that the peak of Olympus was not only a legend, but a real place. A place where wonder still breathed among stone and time. She passed cold caves and clear streams that echoed like voices in stone. She met an old man in the forest. He said nothing, only gave her a small stone, blue and silver. It did not glow but made her feel warm. She kept it close and walked on. Days passed. Elenia reached a valley wrapped in clouds. The air carried the scent of lightning. At the center stood a gate of stone marked with signs of thunder and flame. In the center was carved the shape of a winged horse flying into the sky. She took the stone, placed it into a hollow in the gate. A light flared. The gate opened with no sound. No roar, no whisper, only wind and light showing the way. Behind the gate rose stairs of stone. So tall their peak was hidden in mist. Elenia breathed deeply and began to climb. Part 3. The City in the Clouds. At the top of the stairs, Elenia found herself in a city floating among the clouds. Towers of white gold reached the sky. Gardens bore strange glowing fruit. Roads shimmered like silk and light. This was Aetheria, a city built by gods, for souls of courage and hearts of purity. The people there did not speak. They smiled with their eyes and gestures. Elenia asked no questions. Her heart knew this place was her home. At the center of the city stood Pegasus upon a high platform. His wings folded, his mane silver with light. Every step he took brought wind and dancing petals. She walked to him. Pegasus bowed. Elenia touched his brow. In that moment a memory passed into her heart. She saw her mother riding Pegasus across skies. Her mother, young and brave, once chosen to guard Aetheria from a darkness deep and old. Elenia understood now why she always felt the sky calling. Why she alone saw Pegasus when no one else did. The story will continue in the next parts, where Elenia faces an ancient darkness rising again from the depths of the world, and the fate of Aetheria and all of humankind will rest on the courage of one girl who once lived beneath the mountain. Part 4. The Awakening Below the Mountain. Elenia stayed in Aetheria, learning its ways, learning its winds, learning its history. The people showed her paths made of sky gardens with roots of cloud lakes, of light and books that whispered knowledge as the pages turned. Pegasus remained silent but always close. His wings no longer soared but rested as if waiting for something. One night, as stars burned bright and silent, Elenia walked alone near the edge of the city. There she found a statue cracked and worn, not of gods, not of men, but of something. Twisted, its face lost, its form melted by time and by force. A name was carved beneath it, but worn away by storms. A shadow moved across the statue. A cold wind rose and whispered her name. Elenia turned, but saw nothing. Only mist and stars behind her. But that night her dreams were no longer dreams, they were visions. She saw darkness rising from under mountains. Black stone and fire chains pulled from earth and sky. A creature with no eyes and too many mouths. A voice that broke trees and called for vengeance. Elenia woke with her hands trembling and the stone from the gate burning hot in her palm. She went to Pegasus. He looked at her with the gaze of storms and time, and she understood without a word the darkness that once was sealed by her mother had begun to rise again. The chain had cracked, the gate below the world had been touched by hate and fear, and Elenia was the only one with the blood of the guardian, the only one who could descend. Pegasus bowed and she climbed onto his back. The city held its breath, the clouds parted. The stars turned their gaze as Elenia and Pegasus soared through night and wind down to the world where the light faded. Part 5. The Gate of the Depths. They flew over mountains and oceans, over cities that slept without knowing what stirred below. Elenia felt the air grow heavier. Pegasus flew low, each wing beat slow and strong. Each breath she took filled with the scent of ash and forgotten fire. At the edge of the world they found the gate, a ring of black stone carved from the bones of the first giants. Around it grew no tree, no moss, no life. Only wind that whispered things too old for words. Elenia dismounted. The stone in her hand glowed faintly. Her heart beat like thunder. She stepped forward and the gate opened, not with force, not with sound, but with a shiver in the world itself. Inside was not a tunnel, but a descent into silence. The walls moved like flesh, the air throbbed with ancient pain. As she walked, voices filled the air, voices of those who had fallen before her, voices of those who had failed. But she kept walking, her feet steady, her will strong. She remembered her mother, she remembered the village. She remembered every dream she ever had. At the bottom she found it, the beast. It had no form, only eyes that burned without shape, only mouths that spoke. No truth, only limbs that crawled without grace. But it knew her, it called her name. Elenia stood before it, the stone in her hand now pulsing with light. And as the beast lunged, she raised her hand, and the light burst like a sun in the dark. Part 6. The Trial of Flame and Wind. The light held the beast back for a moment, only a moment. But in that moment Elenia saw its harder. Black crystal cracked in the center of its chest. Pegasus appeared beside her once more. He reared and kicked the air. The light of Aetheria flowed into his wings. Elenia climbed upon his back again, and together they flew into the heart of the storm. The beast roared, the ground split. The sky turned red, but Elenia rode forward, her hands wrapped around the light. Pegasus dove into the beast, the light struck the crystal, and in that moment memory flooded the cave. She saw the gods building a world. She saw her mother binding the beast in chains of fire. She saw her choice made by fate and time and blood, and she made her own choice. She gave the stone to the heart of the beast, not to destroy but to seal, to bind not with power but with peace, to use not fire but truth. The beast screamed, then grew still. Its mouth closed, its eyes dimmed. The crystal sank into silence. Pegasus carried her out, the gate closed behind them. The light above returned, the stars blinked once more. Elenia did not speak. Pegasus flew with pride. The wind was calm and the world was quiet. Part 7. The Return to Aetheria. When they returned, the city was waiting. Flowers bloomed in the sky, towers rang with bells of light. The people greeted her not with cheers but with calm they knew. Elenia stood before the fountain of memory. She dropped the last light of the stone into the water. The reflection showed her mother smiling with pride. Pegasus knelt before her not as a beast, but as a guardian. She was no longer a visitor. She was now a protector. She would remain in Aetheria to guide others to walk with wind, and truth to fly not in body but in heart. Far below the mountain her village dreamed in peace. The sea sang, the hills turned gold, and the sky watched with eyes of light. Part 8. The Quiet Before the Storm. Years past, time in Aetheria moved like a river without sound. Elenia walked the skies each day. Her eyes watched the edge of the world. Her hands held peace, but her heart remained ready. Pegasus stood always nearby, his wings folded, his gaze calm but never resting. Together they trained others who had the courage to climb the stair of stone, others who heard the call of stars. But deep below the mountain shadows stirred again. Not the beast, for it had been sealed, but echoes remained, fragments left behind. Broken memories and twisted rage still whispered through cracks in the earth. Elenia knew that peace is never forever, but peace is always worth fighting for. One night as moonlight poured over the towers of Aetheria, the wind brought a new sound. A song not of war, not of sorrow, but of warning. A voice cried from the south. The stars dimmed slightly. Pegasus rose without command. Elenia mounted, and the sky opened once more. They flew into night, into smoke and flame and stone. Part 9. The Final Gate. Far across the world they found a ruin. A crater burning with purple fire, rocks floated above ground. Trees twisted into shapes that did not belong. This was a scar, a tear in the fabric of the world. Elenia stepped into it. Her body felt heavy, her light dimmed, but she kept walking. At the heart of the ruin stood a second gate, older than even the first. It had no carvings, no markings, only silence. Pegasus walked with her wings low, tail still. They passed through the gate and entered a place that had no time. There was no ground, no sky, only a void of color and shape. And within it something moved. It was not the beast, it was the memory of the beast. The breath it left behind. The voice without body, the echo of hatred. The pain of every soul it ever touched. It saw Elenia, it screamed without sound and reached for her. But Elenia did not fight. Not with flame, not with blade, not with power. She closed her eyes and let the truth speak. She spoke with memory, with peace, with love. The voice raged, the color burned, the world cracked. Then it was still. Her voice had reached, it had touched the wound, and the wound had closed. The echo was gone, the tear sealed, the silence became peace. Part 10. Wings of the Future. Alania returned to Aetheria. Not alone, behind her came light. Across the sky came hope, new stars appeared. Stars of those who would follow. She was no longer the girl from the village. She was now the guardian of gates, the rider of Pegasus, the voice of the wind. She taught not war but courage, she taught not fear but truth. And one day she stood at the edge of the sky again. A young child stood beside her, eyes wide, heart ready. The stars above shimmered and called. Eleni smiled, Pegasus stepped forward, wings shining brighter than ever, and the next rider climbed into the light.